Welcome to the POMcast with Steve Willis, your independent, unbiased, and unbought source for Ole Miss athletics. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Tuesday, November 3rd, 2020, Election Day. Hope you're getting out and exercising your right and not being a total loser there. Because if you can and you don't, for this one, it's kind of on you. So, anyway, we are here to talk about a little bit of Ole Miss. We got 30 minutes to expand. We'll probably delve more into my pet topics because there's not a lot to go on right now. DeMarcus Thomas was released from the hospital. He was passing his test. He's got all his feeling back. I thought we had another Chucky situation with DeMarcus, but thankfully that did not happen. Your prayers actually did work. So congratulations. And good to have DeMarcus back with the program. It's kind of a good thing. Anyway, you can follow us on Twitter at @TheStephenWillis or at @OlePositively. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/POMcast. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Positively Ole Miss or follow us on Twitch at Positively Ole Miss. Now, if audio is more your speed, you can catch us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, SoundCloud, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and Pandora. So thank you very much. Again, we were talking earlier. It is election day. It's real chilly outside, and lines seem to be forming everywhere before the polls even open. So we're looking at a pretty massive turnout election. So be prepared if you want to go to the polls, or if you're there to maybe pack a chair just in case. But bring your headphones for your phone so you can listen to the POMcast or whichever podcast you want to listen to. That'll be available to you. But it looks like it's going to take a little time. But today is the beginning of the end of our long national nightmare. That is this campaign that is ridiculous. So, again, we pointed out that DeMarcus Thomas is okay. He made it through this very scary event yesterday, and we're thankful for that. Now, talking about the Vandy game, which, I mean, there's not really a look forward that we can do at the moment, and we're going to talk about basketball probably at some point, but we're mainly going to hit on this and recruiting today. So it's going to be about Vanderbilt and about recruiting and what recruiting looks like for this staff, and what it looks like going forward to all staffs in college recruiting. It's not just going to be at high schools and JUCOs. It's going to be a fully serviced thing. And Lane Kiffin talked about it in his introductory press conference. He's going to handle this a little differently. So you need to be prepared for that. But on this weekend, Ole Miss just decimated Vanderbilt. Matt Corral had the greatest quarterback game in the history of the school, a couple of weeks after having the worst quarterback game in the history of the school. So we've hit both extremes. So right now, his legacy is extremes. He can be oh so good. He can be oh so bad. And we got to raise that floor. That should be his, whatever he's developing, it should be about lifting that floor step by step by step. And then you get to the point where average is the floor, all of a sudden he's playing in the NFL. Where he is right now, he's probably going to wash out pretty quickly. So just a heads up there. So, Elijah Moore set the school record for receiving yards, tied the school record for receptions. by the way, that's what that jet sweep at the end was about. They got called back for a penalty. Was about getting him catch 15 and the school record. But it didn't happen, and it's like they tried. But the whole goal was just a jet sweep real quick, and let's do this. Defensive line and linebackers played better. The cornerbacks and defensive backs played better. A.J. Finley had a good game. He had a real good game. And with a pick, a fumble recovery, and like 12 tackles. He really had a good game, and he looks like the light is starting to come on a little bit, which will be good for a free safety because he's the one that has the wandering eyes. He's the one that the jet sweep against Alabama, they ran right by him because he was following something else. So it's good to see the light starting to come on. He needs to kind of stack these games on top of each other and, build himself a nice little binder of, hey, these are good performances. Next up, South Carolina. After that, Texas A&M. After that, Mississippi State. After that, LSU. Ole Miss has an opportunity, a really good opportunity to go 3-1. And if they go 3-1, that means they closed out the season 4-1, which would be plenty of momentum going into 2021. And it'll kind of make up for them starting 1-4. So, and they'll be in that Texas A&M game. They might not win it, but they'll be in it. And remember what I told you about this season. This is a 10-game developmental season. So, one of the things that is developmental is everybody playing this drop 8 defense against this offense. It's a chance for us to find something else in the passing game that works. Find something that defeats it. And you're starting to see it a little more after a little more after a little more after a little more. And that's the way this is supposed to work. But Matt Corral needs to see it all. He needed to go through Arkansas to get to Auburn. He needed to go to Auburn to get to Vanderbilt. Now, he went through Vanderbilt, his first data point for recovery of a slump. We need to continue it. All right, POMcast, segment 1 in the books. Stick around.
Only 10% of us get enough daily exercise.
And that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of us are overweight or obese.
We spend 6 hours a day in front of a screen.
As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us the right start in sports, and we'll never stop.
Learn how at active4life.ca.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis from Positively Ole Miss. We're almost done with this break. We'll be back with good information quite soon.
The military has been in every generation of my family, and so has VA. It wasn't easy for my dad after Vietnam, but VA helped him and my mom get the home they'd always wanted. My grandpa's been coming to VA since World War II. They even helped him lay to rest one of his battle buddies from Normandy. And me, I followed in their footsteps and served with pride. And now that I'm out of the military, the GI Bill's helping me with school. Every generation of my family has served, and VA has served us all.
All right, POMcast, Stephen Willis, thanks for listening. We're going to get into this segment in a second about recruiting. Again, we want to congratulate Matt Corral. It was the best quarterback game in school history. and it was the first data point that shows resiliency in his game. His bounce back after the slump that was Arkansas and Auburn came through with his performance against Vanderbilt. Now, competition's going to go up a little bit. We have South Carolina next. So the next data point will be that. His performance there. But it looks like at the moment, it's a very, to quote it all, it's a V-shaped recovery. So with this, you want to go out and stack another game against South Carolina. And then after that, Texas A&M competition goes up again. And that'll probably be the high water mark of the rest of the year of defense. Mike Elko is really good. And then there's State, and then there's LSU. So they're going to provide different tasks. But if you take this season as a 10-game developmental season, it's going to really help you in 2021. You need to see it. It's coming at you in such a way that you get to see many different types of defenses. The only thing we're lacking, and we're kind of not lacking it, but is Kirby's 3-4. Now, we got Todd Grantham's 3-4, which is kind of similar but more aggressive. But Kirby's 3-4 is a different animal. I would have liked to seen that this year. So, we're going to talk a little bit today about recruiting and how that's going to look going forward. Now, we have a whole bunch of analysts that are going to hot take that there's some kind of a problem because what we are doing is different. Now, with Lane Kiffin, you have high school players, junior college players, grad transfers. So there's 4 different acquisition methods for players. You saw that last year, and we have 6 or 7 transfers. I expect that to continue to next year. And you get Otis Reese and Jacob Springer. So you've added a top 100 recruit and an all-conference player through the transfer market. That's part of recruiting next year. And next year when the one-time no-consequence transfer comes through, you're going to get punished real quick for being a late adopter. We are not a late adopter. This is something we are constantly going, and we have retooled we'll call it our player personnel department, because it's not a recruiting department anymore. It's a full-fledged player personnel department. So you can expect to see something where we sign 22 to 23 players through JUCO and high school. We process 5 to 10 players that just do not fit what we're doing, and it just didn't work out, and they transfer out. So you have upwards of signing a class of 23 and getting a transfer amount of 10. So that's 33 new players that's available to you. That's different. Well, unless you're Houston Nutt signing 45 players that can't make it to school. But this is very different. And how do you rank a recruiting class like that? Now, that's what people have to figure out, because the way the narrative works, as we told you yesterday, is based off of the old Mel Kiper ranking system back when the NFL was 2 systems. They figured out after 20 years a way to get that into college football a little bit, but now that it's about transfers and grad transfers and all these other things, that skews the rankings even more. So, how will you rate a class that is 17 high school players, 3 all-conference G5 players, and 3 top 250s from the last 3 years? How do you rate that class? The answer is there's not enough knowledge about football among the raters for them to accurately do it. So they probably won't. The way they do it now, like I told you yesterday, is they go to combines and they see them that way. They get analytics and data because it's easier to explain what data means than it is to explain that this player is better than that one, that number 74 is better than 125. You can't quantify that because in different systems, different players match different rankings. A kid could be number 2 in a spread system, number 222 in a pro style system, and number 1000 in a wishbone system. And that's just 3. All these teams with spread offenses are running a different way. Gus Malzahn requires a different fit than Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin requires a different fit than Mike Leach. Mike Leach requires a different fit than Hugh Freeze. Now, if you look at it linearly, some systems are going to be closer and require these same types of players. Some are not. The world's worst example of that, and Mississippi State is going through it right now, going from Dan Mullen, 2 years of Joe Moorhead, and then into the air raid that requires a completely different type of player than the previous 2. And they are struggling right now. On the offensive line, at wide receiver, they have a true freshman that's going to start at quarterback. Their running back quit. It's a bad situation, but it's all because of the system change. That is everything. Everybody's like, well, these are 4-star players. Yeah, 4-star players need to fit the evaluation for what you're doing. You don't want a 255-pound middle linebacker and switch over to a sideline-to-sideline 4-3 system. He's not going to be able to do it, even if he's a 4-star, even if he's a 5-star. He's not going to be able to do it. And he's going to get moved to defensive end, and everybody's going to freak out. Robert Kimdichie at Ole Miss. He was a 3-4 defensive end, but he got moved to defensive tackle at Ole Miss and ultimately went to a pro team that could not find a home for him because he was kind of a tweener. That was the number 1 player in the country. That shows how fragile these rankings are. Will Rogers was a low 3-star. He's starting at Mississippi State. KJ Costello, I think he was either a high 4 or a low 5. And he was going to beat him out this year regardless. The reason, KJ Costello is a pocket passer. He's a pro-style guy. For instance, Justin Herbert, I bring this up all the time. At Oregon, it was not a fit. He was okay. He was pretty good, but everybody thought he was going to screw up when he got to the NFL. Well, he got into a pro-style system. He's the prototypical pro-style quarterback, and he's doing pretty well. It's all about being able to evaluate for what you do. Not just taking a player because stars say to take a player. It's about taking a player that fits what you do. You look at Georgia, what's the difference between Georgia and Alabama? The offense does not fit what Kirby wants to do. He's going around chasing stars, and all of a sudden it looks like he doesn't have a good receiving unit. Well, he does have a good receiving unit. If he had the right system in place, they would look like Alabama. But as it sits now, there's George Pickens and a bunch of dudes. I mean, that's just the truth. George Pickens and a bunch of dudes. They are the poster child for system fit. They're it. They're the ones. They could be Alabama, but you have to transfer over to Alabama, not as a player, but as the scheme. And what Alabama was really good at with their scheme, because to avoid the system problems that they were going to inevitably run into, they could not change from what they were doing in 2013, 2012 to what they're doing now immediately. It took Lane Kiffin coming in and building a hybrid offense that incorporated the best of what they want to do, but also was a place where Derrick Henry could be successful. And Lane Kiffin will tell you, they didn't have many dudes out wide. They didn't have a great quarterback. All they had was Derrick Henry and TJ Yeldon and a suffocating defense that would just constrict you all the way to death. But Lane Kiffin, in a way, took the players that Alabama had, because they're 5 stars everywhere, and made it work. Transitioned. And then Mike Loxley came along, and then Steve Sarkisian inherited this machine now. POMcast, segment in the books. Stick around.
You want to answer that, don't you? I bet it's just killing you seeing the soft glow just inches away. Someone wants to tell you something or ask you something. Oh, come on, answer it already! Just so we're clear, that wasn't my fault. Next time, ignore your inner voice. Don't text and drive. A message from Florida's trusted choice independent insurance agents.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis. I just want you to stick around a little longer. We're going to get back to the podcast right after these messages.
Tonight, nearly 40,000 veterans across the country are homeless. These men and women have pledged to serve our nation, and now we must serve them. Landlords across the country have helped make significant progress in reducing veteran homelessness by making housing available, but there is more that we can do to bring our veterans home. Visit www.va.gov/homeless to see how you can get involved. And if you are a veteran and you are experiencing homelessness, please call 877-4AID-VET. Thank you.
POMcast, last segment of the day. Thank you for joining us. We have a kind of slight week in the SEC this week. Again, I am going to be gone, looking for the palatial Central Florida studios starting Thursday night. I'll be gone for the whole weekend. So I will miss a good number of these games, so I'm not going to be able to speak intelligently after the fact about what happened, but I can talk about them now. And looking at opening lines, like Texas A&M is -7 at South Carolina. I expect that to be a physical beat-em-up game. I really do. South Carolina is trying to get right after their loss to LSU. They've had a couple weeks to prepare for this. And Texas A&M is coming in, and there's a chance there could be a letdown. But with Isaiah Spiller, there's also a chance it's going to be pretty good for the Aggies. Now, South Carolina on defense, they've done pretty well for most of the season, save LSU. But at LSU, it just fell apart. And their offense just fell apart. The whole game was a bad game, and then LSU goes out and gets boat raced against Auburn. It seems like it's going to be a easy Texas A&M win, but I don't know. It's at South Carolina, and we'll see. Tennessee -2 at Arkansas. As an Ole Miss fan, I will say Fayetteville, Arkansas has been a house of horrors for the last, 20 years. And I've just seen weird things happen there. It's hard to get to. There's no real easy way to do it. And Tennessee favored by 2 seems interesting. Now, you cannot play that defense as you saw against Texas A&M and Tennessee because they are old man football running scheme, and it just destroys your rules. So Tennessee could have an advantage, and this is a game that could get away from the Hogs, or it could be one that the tempo of the Arkansas offense gets its thing and they start rolling. I don't know. I'm leaning towards more of a Tennessee win on that one, and it looking more like the Texas A&M game. Florida at Georgia -5. I think that's in Jacksonville, actually. The former cocktail party. Stetson Bennett is looking like he's regressing at quarterback. Of course, that could be a function of the offense and the suffocating of it that Kirby does, trying to make his defense look more and more successful, which they are. But in the age of high scoring, it's a problem. But Florida's offense is really good. Georgia's defense is really good. It's kind of unstoppable force versus immovable object. And then vice versa whenever the other team has the ball. Vanderbilt at Mississippi State. Mississippi State is favored by 19 points. I am not going to say Mississippi State can score 19 points against anybody until I see it. I think they've scored 16 points in like the last 3 weeks or something. And their offense is really struggling, and they're starting a true freshman. There probably is a little history. I don't know if Mike Leach was at Washington State yet when Derek Mason left, but it'll be interesting to see. But we'll see how that goes. I'm right now I'm leaning towards taking Vanderbilt because I just don't think Mississippi State can score. I think their offense is a problem right now. And it's excuse me. It's not anything related to the scheme, but it's Dan Mullen players and Joe Moorhead players and Mike Leach players. There's 3 different coaches, players that are on this team. And that's a big problem. Much like Arkansas, I'll put it to you like this. Chad Morris could not be successful at Arkansas because he had Brett Bielema's players, which are unbelievably different style. If Arkansas wanted to go spread, they shouldn't have hired Brett Bielema because it just influenced everything. And if you don't have the hurt for the rebuild, I'm not saying Chad Morris is good. I'm saying if you don't have the rebuild patience, if you're going to fire a coach in 2 years, you don't understand systems and making changes like that. The same thing is happening in Starkville right now. If you do not have the stomach for this rebuild, you probably need to take a couple years off because we're looking at Mississippi State at possibly going 1-9 this year, maybe 2-8, and going 3-9 next year. They're going to be a little bit better, but they still have to recruit receivers. They are highly deficient at the receiver position at the moment. And they're starting a true freshman quarterback and 2 true freshman running backs. And it's just a problem in Starkville at the moment. Like I said, I just don't trust them to beat anybody by 19 points at this point. Put it like this. If Vanderbilt scores a touchdown, which they will, Mississippi State has to score 26 just to push, 27 to cover. That's 4 touchdowns or 3 touchdowns and 2 field goals, and I just don't trust it. Anyway, that's the podcast for today. Everybody go vote, please. Exercise your right. Stephen Willis, POMcast. Thank you very much.